Well, good evening, everybody. It's Chris here from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta, and I am also the interim CEO of the Alberta Prosperity Project. And I am joined tonight by my friend, Mr.
Kerry Lambert. Am I supposed to say that?
Yeah,
How you doing tonight, Chris?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I wasn't really sure whether I was going to start or you were going to start, but I know you're pretty much the control freak that you are, so I'm glad that you stepped up and did what you did there.
And so I am.
Yes.
So I was pretty excited to do this webinar tonight. We're going to have Roy Beyer on, the co-founder of Taking Back Our Freedoms. He's
That's
also
right.
been very involved with Take Back Alberta and an advocate for people becoming involved in the democratic process, not just at election time, but all of the time.
That's right.
And we're going to talk about that tonight. So, Kerry, what's your take on that? I mean, up until the last maybe 3 years ago, I think you were like me, and you thought that democracy was every 4 years.
I had no all I thought was democracy was going and voting every 4 years, and as we've seen time and time again, that this is what led us to where we are right now. It's the apathy and people just not getting involved, and of course the whole idea behind APP is to get people involved. And I think that's, if there's anything that people are going to take home from this particular webinar, is that you need to get involved. And it doesn't matter if you don't agree with the UCP's policies or you don't agree with that. There are government right now. There are provincial government, and we would be doing the same thing whether it was an NDP government or an independence-minded government. Whoever would be in power, we would be saying, you know what, we have to step up. We have to look at their policies, and we have to go to their AGM in numbers. Because even Taking Back Our Freedoms and even Take Back Alberta have always said, get out there in numbers, and it's all a math game. You can make change by just getting enough people involved. And so I think, having gone through what we've gone through in the last few years, and again getting involved with APP, and I was involved with, well, still am, with the Independence Party of Alberta, it just requires people stepping up and actually being able to do something. And, and if I wasn't involved in this, I'd probably be looking at a school board position, or I'd be at least looking at some way that I could be involved in the community and giving back time to the community. So I think that's the thing that I hope people will take away from this.
Absolutely. So I guess I should let everybody know, as the CEO of the Alberta Prosperity Project, I have a job to do. And my job is to advance the mission of the Alberta Prosperity Project. So the Alberta Prosperity Project is a nonprofit, nonpartisan educational society. And our goal is to educate Albertans as to the rationale and the benefits and merits of Alberta independence, or Alberta sovereignty, or however you want to look at that. One of the ways we can do that is by working with our legislators, the people who make our laws, in order to advance policies that are aligned with our values and get us closer to our mission. So there are some that may think that engaging with the government is a partisan tactic. It is not. If we're going to get anything done in this province, and if we're going to change anything, it's going to be done through the political structure, and it's going to be done through legislation. Now, when it comes to things like the AGMs that our government of the day have, this is where we have the opportunity to use our voice. And the Alberta Prosperity Project will have a very loud voice at this AGM. And our values are going to be spoken in that room, and many of them will make their way into our policy and lead Alberta to a more prosperous future. So that's why we're involved with this. And now, without further ado, seeing how we have a hard stop at 8 p.m. tonight, yes, because following this, as you know, Kerry, I have another webinar to do with Marco and John Williams. John Williams is a candidate for the UCP board as the VP of Communications. So we're going to be doing that right after.
Those will be a great series, because again, the point being is that at the AGM they're voting in the board, and you get to actually, if you attend the AGM, you get to vote in the board, and so everyone should be making an informed decision. And that's the other thing. If we've learned anything over these last few years, is we need to be informed. We cannot just go and check something just because it's a color that we like. No, we need to be informed about who the candidates are, what their policies are, etc. So I think that's important.
No more voting for good hair.
No.
That doesn't lead to prosperity. Anyway, so on that note, with further ado, I'm going to bring on somebody who always has excellent hair
Yes.
and has become a good friend of mine, Mr. Roy Beyer, the co-founder of Taking Back Our Freedoms, and a man who was involved with Take Back Alberta to get our last Premier, Kenny, to resign. So welcome, Roy.
Well, great to be here with you, Kerry and Chris, and with
Awesome.
APP. I'm a proud member of APP as well as TBOF founder, so I think we've got a lot of alignment going on.
Wait a minute, Roy. Did you just say you're also a member of the Alberta Prosperity Project, and you're a member of Taking Back Our Freedoms, and you're a member of Take Back Alberta?
And
Absolutely.
UCP? Yeah. How is that possible?
To me, we need to expand our influence, and every organization has maybe a different focus, unique focus. It's not a contradiction to be a part of APP in terms of their focus towards greater independence from the corruption of Ottawa. And then also, of course, TBOF and TBA. One is national, one is provincial, but our goals are exactly the same. So we work together, and I think a lot of our memberships as well. They understand that, and they're part and parcel of what you guys are doing, and part of what we're doing it together.
Yeah. So we may not be aligned on everything, we may not agree on everything, and we may not be taking the same path to get there. But at the end of the day, we're all focused on making this province better, and that's where our alignment is in working towards a free and prosperous Alberta.
Yeah,
absolutely, and I think it's important for people to understand that we've been duped by the establishment, duped by the notion that, just vote every 4 years and leave the rest to us. And the group that, it's the establishment, the power brokers, people with an agenda that run our political parties in Canada. Canada has the lowest participation rate in terms of political membership, party membership, in the world, other than China and Korea. Those are not, that's not a good group to compare yourself with, but that's where we are. Lowest percentage. And Canadians say, well, politics is kind of it's for, people that are not like me. But the fact is, a political party is only as good or as bad as the people that are participating in the process. So the revolution that's happened here in Alberta is a whole bunch of good people, grassroots, normal, family-oriented, community-oriented, pro-Albertans decided in mass to get involved, and the establishment hates it. But all the more we need to do more of it. And because by joining a political party, you have a voice. And the unique thing about the United Conservative Party, it's not perfect by any means. Let's be clear on this. But the unique thing about the United Conservative Party is that as far as any other major political party in Canada, it is far more grassroots than any other. This is the only major political party where you can join as a member and then decide to register and attend the AGM, and you get to vote on who is the board of directors and the policies of the party. It's the only major political party in Canada, literally, that where you just as an individual have that kind of autonomy to decide to get involved or not get involved. And so it makes perfect sense for people like all of us, even Kerry. So,
even me.
Yeah, all of us. We need to have a voice and get involved because we get to vote for the board of directors and policies. And I know we're going to talk about the board of directors here in the program. I won't get into that, but it's far more important than most people realize. Very important for us to.
Why?
Why?
First of all, before I ask why, I already asked it, but let me rewind. I want to point something out. What Roy just said was, and he was very clear, saying that the United Conservative Party is not perfect. I second that. But you said that there are good people getting involved in that party. Now, the UCP there were some horrible infringements on our rights and freedoms. They did some nasty things over the last 4 years. So there are those out there who would say they're so corrupt. Anybody who's involved with them also becomes corrupt. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I used to be a pastor, and I talked to a lot of people who said, I don't go to church because people in church are hypocrites. I said, well, of course, that's true of everybody. We all have our flaws. And when you go into a political party, it definitely has its flaws. But in politics in particular, it attracts some bad players. There's no question about that. And it's people with great big egos, power-hungry people, people with an agenda. It attracts that kind of people. So it repels good people, right? Good people say, I don't want to be involved with that because I don't want any association with that. But the right answer is for us to join in overwhelming numbers and I call it flush the toilet, right? So get rid of the bad with incoming good. And and that's just the reality, that the real decision making happens in a political party between elections, not at election time. Almost every important decision has already been made. On election day, you just get to choose, usually between two bad choices. And now, if we want to change that, we have to at least get involved in one of those political parties that has a chance to win and try to make it better. And it's never going to be perfect. No church is ever going to be perfect, if you want to use that analogy. And no family is perfect. That's one we can all relate to, right? So we all have families that with all kinds of flaws, and that's true of a political party. A little more true of a political party than other organizations because it typically attracts the wrong kind of people. And I know I was very turned off on politics after 20 years of involvement. I just decided I had enough. And it was a wrong decision. It was because of the repulsion of the corruption. And I realized, you know what, by stepping back, I didn't make it better. I just need to find a way to get more people like me getting involved. And that's what we've been doing the last few years.
Yeah.
So let me just comment on that for a second. So you mentioned you're a pastor and people say they don't go to church because people in church are hypocrites. Everybody's a hypocrite. Everybody in some way or another, you know, I tell people, hey, we should act this way. We should do these things. And then I fail. People in general are not perfect. And that's the whole point of the church, is that we're imperfect and we need to have fellowship with other imperfect people and accept the fact that we're not perfect and we need something better and greater than ourselves. So that's the point of church. Now, the political party idea, not getting involved because it's full of corruption. Politics, as I've learned, is nothing but a math problem or a math solution. And it's like you said, it's numbers. If you bring enough people, if enough people show up, you will outnumber the people who are there for bad reasons and you will win. It's very, very simple. And if you're going to, I think it would be difficult for a conservative to say, well, don't get involved with that party because the party's corrupt. Because that same conservative will turn around and say, well, don't blame the gun. Blame the person holding the gun. And a political party is the sum of the people that make up the party. So if there's more good people getting involved, the party's going to be good. If those people say, oh, I'm not going to do that because 4 years ago this happened or because 5 years ago this happened, then the party continues to be bad. And in this case, that party is our government and they are making law on the behalf of the people of Alberta. So if we get involved with that and we change that, the outlook of the party with good people, then we get good legislation.
Exactly.
So, now I'll ask that
Couldn't
question.
be better
Why?
said,
Why is it important that we get involved between elections? What goes on here? What is going on?
Well, you know, Jason Kenney, ironically enough, was a very good friend of mine. He got involved. So he got involved before he got involved in politics, he visited me in St. Albert at my home and talked about wanting to get involved in politics. He was 22 years old. So I've known him forever, for a long time. And when he jumped into, Alberta politics and merged the two parties, I thought he was a hero, fantastic, because he's sacrificing so much and risking so much. So I had huge respect for him and huge dismay when I saw how he handled the COVID crisis. And not just once, but go back and forth, flip-flop, and eventually insult his support base. Like his most fundamental, his strongest people who brought him to the party, so to speak, and start to insult them, right? So for me, it was an easy decision in one sense to say, I can't support this man anymore. It was hard emotionally, if you understand, right? Emotionally, it was like, I was mourning the fact that this man was becoming so much different than who I thought he was, right? So, but that's also the point in time where so many Albertans decide we had enough. We have to do something. And it was this radical concept: we're going to force the resignation of a premier who had a reputation across Canada as one of the best politicians in Canada. So even though he was not liked, as far as a political operative, he was one of the very, very best in Canada. And we just joined forces with freedom people, and not just freedom people, but people who believe in grassroots politics. I talked to so many MLAs who said, my biggest problem with Jason Kenney is he doesn't listen to anyone. He believes he's right. He's got a small circle who decide everything. As an MLA who represents 50, 60, 70,000 people, I have no voice. He never even asked me for my opinion about anything. And so the grassroots politics is a value that I embrace. The power of the people, the voice of the people, the right of the people to be heard. And then also, of course, fundamental rights and freedoms that were being trampled on during the COVID crisis. So those two things made it, very clear I had no other choice but to join in with other groups and say, we're calling on Jason Kenney's resignation and do whatever we can for that. So that the success that happened from that, I think there was a lot of people who said, okay, what's next? And that good news is we understood what's next. And what's next? We need to elect a good premier. What's next? We need to elect a good board of directors. What's next? We need to, and there was the what's next, which means continuous, never-ending participation, right? So no more of this every 4 years. We can't trust the system. We have to change the system. It's going to require an army of people being engaged. We're just getting started. The UCP is just a small piece of this iceberg. When you start thinking about school boards, about library boards, about all these spheres of influence that are ripping our society apart, we need to, in large numbers, get involved. So maybe you're saying, well, I don't want to get involved with the UCP. Well, for the library board, school board, think of something, but don't justify non-engagement because we can't afford it.
That's a great point. Because people, we hear a lot, oh, the library has these books in them. How disgusting, how terrible. Oh, the school is doing this, how terrible. And then rather than taking time out of our busy lives to go and sit on the boards that makes those decisions, we just run around in circles screaming at the air about it. But now we've learned that that's not the case. But I have a question for you. You said that the UCP is a grassroots party. And that's what you like about it. And that's what I liked about it as well, with my extremely limited understanding of politics 4 years ago. How in the world did a grassroots party that was supposed to be the best of both worlds when the two parties, the PCs and the Wild Rose, joined, how did it allow the things that happened under Jason Kenney's tenure to happen? How did it become a top-down authoritarian party where the MLAs weren't listened to by the leader?
Very good question, because I had that question as well. How did this happen? And it was actually Joel Mullen, who was one of the original founders of the UCP party from the Wild Rose side. And he was also on the board of directors, recruited by Jason Kenney. He was on the board of directors, and he was the infamous board of director who called for Jason Kenney's resignation and then was forced to resign from the board of directors, right? The board of directors. So this is very interesting. So when the UCP and the Wild Rose merged, basically because of the numbers of people on the Wild Rose side, which is more grassroots, all of the policies from the Wild Rose side were adopted. The governance rules were adopted. The grassroots decision-making was adopted. And of course, we couldn't have known it at the time, but it was very clear by Jason Kenney's decisions that he hated this part of the new party. So what he did is he arranged for stacking the board of directors of the UCP party. Is that basically in the last UCP party where he was stacking the board, last AGM, annual general meeting. We have to stop using acronyms because some people say, what is that? Annual general meeting of the UCP party. He bussed in hundreds of people to make sure he got his slate of board members elected.
Wait, hold on a sec, Roy. So Jason Kenney brought enough people enough people showed up for Jason Kenney and they won. Is that what you're saying?
100%. They got their board of directors, and the board of directors were beholden to Jason Kenney's agenda instead of, if you look at the constitution of the party, the bylaws of the party, the board of members are supposed to serve the membership and not the premier, right? So, but they found people loyal to the premier, loyal to the level that even rules that are written in the bylaws were ignored. For example, a leadership review can only happen in the UCP party by way of a special general meeting, in-person meeting of the members. And so that was slated, of course, it's a while back now, but no, not that long ago, a year and a half ago, in Red Deer, I believe in April or something like that. And the numbers were bad for Jason Kenney. So he just changed the rules. He decided, well, we're not going to do in-person, we're going to do mail-in ballot. And it required the board of directors going along with the change of rules. And the change of rules can only happen by way of a vote of the members. So all they did was ignore the rules to do the bidding of the person that got them to join the board, right? So we, again, the board of directors, this is a new discovery for me. Of course, with TBA, you all know David Parker. He's the person that helped me, after many decades of involvement in politics, to understand for the first time the importance of a board of directors in a political party. I always thought that's the most boring part of the political party. It's actually the most, in a way, the most important, because these people will actually make sure that the rules of the party are being adhered to, that the membership is being heard. And if you have people who are beholden to someone else or some other agenda, you're in trouble. So that's where we understood, okay, we got rid of Jason Kenney, we elected Daniel Smith. Now we need to elect this board of directors. And so that's what we started doing with TBA a year ago. And of course, TBOF and other organizations joined in with that, but TBA was leading the way. And it was a very exciting adventure that took place there a year ago.
Can I take that a little further? So I'm going to give another reason why that was allowed to happen. It's because the majority of us who didn't like what's going on sat in front of our computers, pounding on our keyboards and putting up Facebook memes instead of becoming involved in the process. We failed to show up. The other guys showed up and they won. It's that simple. It's so cut and dry. It just boggles my mind. And after all this time, we've been, how do we fix this? What's the solution? What's the solution? And even myself, I would say at Alberta Prosperity Project meetings, I would say the solution is us. It's always been us. If you want to know who's going to save you, go to the bathroom, look in the mirror. And that's the person that's going to save you. And it's so weird how it took that much time to apply this to a real life situation where we can actually make some change. So it is very exciting that, it's obviously it sucks that we allowed these things to happen by not showing up. I mean, that's on us. But the beautiful part is, because it's so simple and so cut and dry, if we simply do the opposite of what we did last time, then we will win and we can change these things. So I'm hopeful for that.
It took a lot of pain for us to come to a realization that it really, we were wrong to disengage. And now what do we do, right? So, and maybe there's a few good things that came out of COVID crisis. Not that I would ever wish that on anyone, but it was the realization of lack of engagement allowed this to get this bad, the wrong people to be in power. And also out of COVID came a lot of relationships. Like I made so many, again, we talk about that again and again, the tremendously powerful, life-changing experience, but the relationships that were acquired out of that. There's a lot of people of like mind, and now we're working together with the realization we blew it, but you know what? Together we can change things, and it's very, very exciting that we have an opportunity here in Alberta, probably more so than anywhere else in Canada, to bring about some big changes.
Absolutely, and Pat says the same thing. So very true. Be a part of the political party and flush out the bugs. It can only make our province a better place. We, the people, can do that. Yes, we can. So Roy, I'm just going to go through. There's some questions in here. Some of them are just, current events type thing, and some of them are more related to the conversation. I'm going to put some questions up, and I'd like you to just, or Kerry, if you want, just have a real quick answer to the question, and then we'll move on because we're time crunched today. Here's something. And now I'm not sure what Rick is getting at here, but Rick says the UCP kept Kenny in power long after he was removed. Corruption. Now, I'm not sure exactly what he means. Do you have anything, a comment on that, Roy? Did you see that Kenny stayed in power after he was removed?
I think. Go ahead.
Kerry.
Yeah. All I was going to say is I'm not sure whether or not he wasn't kept in power per se. He was removed, but then because of the way the question was in the in the ballot, he basically stayed on until they elected a new leader, right? So that's probably what he was getting on, is that was not cut and dry. And I believe, has that changed in any of the policies that have been made in the UCP, or is that one of the policies that is going to be changed in this AGM? Do you know?
It's not on this AGM.
Okay.
It should be. It actually comes to mind as another thing that we should be doing, because it was extremely unusual for a leader to resign and then stay on until the new leader is selected.
Yeah.
Usually, what happens, a person like Aaron O'Toole, he resigned, and somebody else stepped in as an interim leader to allow a proper new leader to be selected for that process to happen. So again, Jason Kenney hung on, and it was accommodated by the board of directors, the old board of directors, I should say. Yeah. But eventually he was forced to step down, and eventually we were able to elect at least half of a board of directors that is looking to bring about these kinds of changes. So, but it's very unusual what he did, no question, but there was no constitutional way to force him to step down during that interim period.
So from my perspective on that question, he may be referring to Kenny's sphere of influence. So when Jason Kenney resigned and eventually stepped down and was replaced by Danielle Smith, he did still have influence in the party, because there was what we refer to as the Kenney crew still within the party, still wishing Kenney was the premier and still wanting to bring forth policy and things that Jason Kenney was an advocate for.
You're right.
Well, thank goodness, folks, we can change that. We can stamp that stuff out, and we can do it at things like what Kerry has on his screen right here. The UCP AGM coming up November 3rd and 4th. This is where we have our voice, and this is where we say, you know what, we don't like these things. We don't like this policy being here. We don't like this sphere of influence affecting our legislation going forward, and we want it gone. So if you have a problem with that, I would suggest that you use your voice. And again, if another party had won the election and they had an AGM, I would be saying go to that AGM and use your voice as well.
I agree.
Because if we're going to advance any of our missions for any of our groups, it's going to be done working with whatever government is in power, because the only other way to do it is by working outside of the government in power. And as far as I know, that's not legal.
Yeah. Just quickly, if you scroll to the pricing, I just want to make a quick point, Chris. So we elected 9 out of 18 board members. So last year, 9 positions were up. The Freedom Movement elected 9 out of 9. So we had really good success last year. So, this Kenney group, we'll just call them the Jason Kenney establishment, wanted to increase the AGM price to about $550.
Yeah.
And the reason is to understand how the establishment thinks. It's like a private club. It's like a golf club. More expensive, the more exclusive, the smaller the circle, the more power we have. Yeah. And the 9 members that we elected last year fought for us to get that price down. So even though it's, it's still for some people very expensive, $329, it's much cheaper than it would have been. Okay. $99 for youth, $14 to $25. So the good news is that's not too late to register. The only thing right now, this is very important, is in order to have a vote at the AGM, you must be a member of the UCP party effective tomorrow, by the end of tomorrow.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so that's the deadline. If you're not a member by tomorrow,
so October
it's
12th.
$10 to have a membership. So you got to be a member to have a vote, right? and then you need to register to vote. So if you're thinking to come, the most important thing you can do right now today is go to the UCP website, sign up, become a member. And remember, this price is way lower than it would have been, thanks to our 9 board members who fought for a lower price versus the price we had last year, or they were going to ask for this year.
Yeah.
But wait, Roy, the UCP did horrible things and they infringed on our rights and unlawfully closed businesses over the last 4 years. Also, some of the people that are involved in the party now were involved in decisions in the past that increased the influence of organizations like the WEF and the WHO in Alberta. How could we possibly justify becoming involved with an organization that did that?
By electing enough MLAs to reverse any stupid decisions that were made in the past. I was involved personally in this last election. Before the actual election, there's nominations. So I was involved with an organization that did 9 nominations, 9 people, 9 MLAs, conservatives, who resigned because they didn't like Daniel Smith. So there's 9 establishment people running, right? And 9 freedom people running. Do you understand? 9. So we won 7 out of 9. In other words, it's a process. It takes time. If any MLAs still need to understand how much we're looking for change, just say, wait for the next nominations, right? So there are fewer people that were a problem this time than before, but we still have some cleaning up to do.
So would it be fair to say it's more important to look to our future and learn from the mistakes of the past so that we can be more prosperous going forward? Or should we only focus on the mistakes of the past and refuse to participate because mistakes were made?
Yeah, I think you learn from your past and always focus on what was good too. We had enough MLAs. We had a good number of MLAs that fought very valiantly, but they didn't quite have the votes necessary to force the leadership review. But what we did have was enough constituency associations, which is the group, a board that runs a local constituency. We needed 23, and we ended up with enough to force a leadership review. So the leadership review happened because we had people at the local level demanding change, even though the premier had so much power and pushing back so hard. In the end, the people won. So we should be encouraged by the fact good people are involved. We added a lot more good people in the recent election, and policies like the policies that are on the floor for this AGM are the best, I believe, ever seen anywhere in Canada. And it's pro-freedom, pro-Alberta, just really strong policies. So the party is moving in the right direction, and it takes time for us to get rid of all of the old riffraff and bring in all of the new people and to really change the course of direction. But it's well underway, and we should be super encouraged by what we've already seen.
I can tell you folks, if I've seen this policy, I've read through some of it, and if 50% of the policies that are being put forward by folks like us who believe in rights and freedoms and prosperity, if they were adopted by this party, they would never be able to do what they did in the last 3 years to us again, ever. That's how powerful this policy is. And that's why I'm so excited for the AGM in November, because we have an opportunity to fix something right now. There was a question that was up, and the question said, where did it go? If we are a member, how do we register to vote?
Yeah.
Right. What's up on the screen? What Kerry is sharing? That's how you register to vote. Unfortunately, there is a cost associated with attending the AGM. And yeah, they say, oh, it's because you got to cover the cost of the facility and blah, blah, blah. And that is true to some degree. I'm not saying that the process is perfect, but you know what? How many of us go out and have a coffee 4 or 5 times a week? How many of us have a Netflix or Disney Plus subscription? I don't, because I don't watch TV. But what I'm getting at is the cost to do something like this, to participate in it, it's really, yeah, money's tight, but put it in the perspective of an entire year or 4 years, or what our futures look like. And all of the sudden, the $199, you know, maybe you got to save up for it, but it's money well spent. So that's how you register to vote, is you register for the AGM and you show up and you participate. And I think it's going to be a fun time as well. The last ones I went to were fun.
You know, someone
I'd like to
asked
talk briefly about that somewhere along the line, but we're guaranteeing some fun as well as some serious business. So, because I know that a lot of people are not so heavy into politics that they love all of the really serious discussions, but the serious discussions need to be had, but we'll make sure we have fun along the way.
that's a good
Here's
question.
a good question, Roy. Since board members are elected by membership, are the board members accessible to the membership?
That's a very, very good question, Grace, and they should be, but they aren't always that way, right? So, and so one of the things that we're wanting to see changed is that if you're going to put your name up to represent the party membership, that you need to be accessible, and they all have email addresses that are specific UCP managed, and there's no excuse for not responding. And now, mind you, this is a volunteer position, right? So these guys are working, these board members are working typically 20 to 30 hours per week, sometimes more. I know a few that are more like 40 to 60, right? And they don't get paid for it, right? But at the same time, that type of person that says yes to being a board member, he needs to serve the membership. And that's going to be, I think, more true of the newer ones that we're electing than the old establishment.
And if they aren't accessible, if they're not listening to the membership, then where do we remedy that, Roy? How can we fix that?
Well, there's, for example, in Edmonton or Calgary or any of the regions, there's 5 regions, I should say, 5 regions: Central Alberta, Southern Alberta, Northern Alberta, Calgary, and Edmonton. In any one of those regions, there's 2 representatives that are there to represent the region. So if one doesn't respond, then talk to the other. And I find that these regional reps are a little more responsive. The vice presidential position and the president position tend to be a little busier, harder to get a hold of them. But I tell people, connect with your regional rep for your board, and you have 2 of them. No matter what region you're in, there's 2 people that are there to serve you locally.
And if you don't like the job they're doing, if you don't like how they've served the membership of the party, attend the AGM and vote them out.
Every 2 years, they're up for re-election, or I noticed that of the 8 positions up for re-election this year, only 1 is hanging around, the rest are leaving. So it makes it a little bit easier for us to find new people to replace the old.
So
Somebody had asked who the candidates are for the AGM, and you know what? As silly as it is, I'm looking at the website and I can't find them. I can't find a list.
Under the AGM. So if you go to the AGM page,
Yeah.
towards the bottom, there's an option for the candidates. You don't have candidates' names on there.
Okay.
Yeah, but you'll see the candidates, and I'll just advertise. There is a town hall meeting taking place in Calgary where all the candidates are going to be there. We're going to feature the presidents. So there's 4 presidential candidates. This position is extremely influential within the party, and we need the right person. So at that town hall in Calgary, you're scrolling right to the right page. Go to Eventbrite to find the ticket. It's $10 a ticket. It's a Canyon Meadows theater. So that's the famous Canyon Meadows theater that gets used for all kinds of freedom events.
Yeah.
We're going to have the presidential town hall, but we're also going to have the other vice president candidates speak briefly, and Southern Alberta and Calgary regionals. So Southern Alberta, Calgary regional candidates will each have 2-3 minutes to introduce themselves. The vice presidential candidates will have a few minutes to introduce themselves, but we're going to have a real discussion with the presidents. We had a president that was not serving the party or the leader, in the past, and now we have an opportunity to elect somebody that's really going to change the course of direction. So want to advertise that event. If you're in the Calgary area, Southern Alberta, anywhere around, we want to pack that hall. We're going to have a really good discussion with these presidential candidates and make sure we pick the right one.
So Canyon Meadows Cinemas, Tuesday, October 17th at 7 p.m., UCP Presidential Town Hall, Cowtown Showdown. We're going to put that up on the Whistle Stop Cafe Facebook page so people can see what's happening there. And I think, Roy, you're going to be live streaming that. Was that the idea?
We might actually hold back on the live stream but record it and play it later. And there's a very important reason for that. Yep. Calgary Lougheed is the first constituency association to actually sponsor this event. And by the way, this has never happened in the last leadership race. No one did this. And and Daryl Comic, who's the president, freedom guy, and he said, why would we not be doing this, right? So he's doing this, and now there's 4 other CAs, constituency associations, that are doing the same thing. All freedom-minded. One group out of Rocky Mountain House, I should say. They're doing that event, as well as Edmonton, and as well as Bonnyville, right? So we don't want to take away the thunder from those other places. We're going to record it, and when these are all done, we're going to hand it over to you to post it on the APP page or the Whistle Stop page, wherever you want, and get the word out. We want people to be able to hear what these different candidates have to say and make a good decision based on what you're hearing.
Quick question from Linda. Do we vote for the candidates in each region or just the region we reside in?
Good question. On the regional candidates, you vote only for the person that's running in your region, right? So I just want to say a quick story, because stories are powerful. Last year, we drove as many members as we can to the AGM, hoping maybe possibly we might win 9, but if we won 7, we would have considered that a victory. And Calgary and Edmonton were the 2 spots where we were really worried, right? Because just the type of voters that are there and the membership base. And so we did right to the very last day, got people to come, register, vote, register, vote, register, vote. And in the end, we won by 34 votes in Edmonton. Our candidate, Vince Byfield, won by 34 votes. And in Calgary, it was even closer. Our candidate, Peter Weichler, won by 10 votes in Calgary. And there was one family that, between husband, wife, their children, and couple friends they brought along, they had 10 people that they brought through the snowstorm from Calgary to Edmonton last year. 10 people. They were the difference, right? I told them, if you didn't show up, the other side would have won. So every vote matters. And, that's a good example. 10 votes. By 10 votes, we won in Calgary last year.
And that brings up a good point, Roy. There's a lot of people that are concerned about nefarious election activities where results are changed and votes are counted incorrectly and stuff. But let me tell you something. That could account for a percentage of any election, anything where anything's being counted by human beings. But the reality is, if you bring enough people and you show up with enough people, you can overcome even that. And I'm not insinuating that that's going to happen in these cases or has happened in these types of, the board elections or anything like that. But my point is, if you are concerned about something like that, then don't just go by yourself. Bring 10 people with you, and math will be on your side.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I want to say, for people who absolutely can't afford to go, you can volunteer. As a volunteer going to the AGM, you get to go for free. Right. So that's a way of going there. And the volunteers that we had last year that went for free, some of them were scrutineers for the vote. So we had our own people volunteering, going there for free, and watching to make sure that nothing nefarious was happening on the vote. So I just want to encourage people, where there's a will, there's a way. Your voice matters. Your voice can make a difference. So if you can be a volunteer for the UCP, that also is a huge option for you. And they need lots
Do
of
the
people.
volunteers
Remember,
get
this,
to
I
vote?
want to say this year's AGM is well over 3,000 people. It's already by far the biggest AGM in the history of Canada, both federal and provincial. There's never been an annual general meeting in the history of this country that is as big. Last month, they had an AGM for the Conservative Party of Canada with 2,200 members. This is over 3,000 here in Alberta alone. So there's a bit of a revolution going on, right? So it's at least the beginning of one. And so again, if you're not registered yet, volunteer. Make sure you're a member by tomorrow. Volunteer, and you'll get there, right? So your voice can be the difference in Calgary or Edmonton, especially. We really need you.
I remember
Roy,
when.
do the volunteers get to vote? Sorry, Kerry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the volunteers get to vote. So you get the right to vote for all of the policies, all of the governance, the board of directors, everything. But you have to be willing to volunteer, and it's a bit of work. Yeah. But again, it might be the right kind of work. Scrutineer for the vote is very important work, right? So we want to make sure with those kinds of numbers that we have enough volunteers to make sure everything flows well.
Yeah. I was just going to say, if you remember when they had the last AGM, or it was basically the SGM, the special general meeting where we ousted Kenny. Kenny and his party were basically saying, look, we're so popular that we've got 80,000 people that are coming, or whatever number it was, and they really tried to spin it that everybody was so happy, and the reason that people signed up was because we were so pissed off, right? And so you could even look at it in this way too. So we see that now there's 3,000 people. Is it 3,000 people that really are they upset, or are there 3,000 people that really do want to get involved and make change? What's your take on that?
Well, I think our sense of it is that these are mostly people who are demanding change. They don't like what's happened the last 3 years. They saw some good results last year. There's some people that were skeptical. They didn't show up for the AGM last year. Now they saw what can happen. And so this year the group has grown. I know in my circle, a lot of people, automatically registered and are bringing their friends, just automatically, because it was so fantastic last year. But they're looking for change. This is not about a party. This is about, I'm partying in a celebration way. This is about change for Alberta and demanding change. And so these candidates, and by the way, Dr. Joni is sending in the question there, Joannie. So she's running for secretary of the board. Fantastic candidate. We actually have a lot of really good candidates. So check out the board of directors candidates on the website. Good information.
So that's a good sign that one of the candidates is participating in these webinars.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
So Kurt, our friend Kurt, the amazing Kurt, asked a very good question, and I'm sure this is on a lot of people's minds. Kurt, I don't like your profile picture, but unfortunately, it looks just like you.
I was going to say, he looks.
Sorry,
like
Roy, I covered your face. It looks like Justin Trudeau is on our webcast.
There, now you can see. That's true.
So the UCP is not allowed to make money on the AGM. I believe that's an Elections Alberta thing. Am I correct?
Yeah.
There's been right around $700,000 in fees so far. How do we hold the party accountable to return the overage to the attendees? That didn't happen last time, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's going to require a policy motion, and that one unfortunately didn't make the final 30. But they're planning a special general meeting about 6 months after the AGM, because there were over 300 policy motions submitted. Wow. Which were narrowed down to 120 that were legible and legal. So 120 and only 30 made the final cut, right? So there's lots of things about that have to be improved. There's no question about that. I mean, the reason there's such a huge number is because there's a larger number of people registered than anyone could have dreamed. Last year, I think it was 1,200, 1,300 people. Nobody could have forecast 3,000. So what are they going to do? I don't know. I don't think it's written in stone. It might be to subsidize the next event. It might be to return fees. It'll be up to the board that we elect.
There you go. You hear that, folks? It will be up to the board.
That's right.
If you are concerned about something like, hey, when there's an AGM, the overages on the event, what's raised, should be divided up and sent back to the attendees, then run for a board position and bring your voice with you. Roy said that we're making change here, and I would say that we're being the change. That's what's happening here. We are being the changes that we want to see, and the first step is we're changing how we interact, the things we do. Instead of sitting on the couch and bitching about something, we are going somewhere. We're changing something. We're getting involved, and that's step one. So this to me, it's not even so much a change or a revolution. This is a revival where people are starting to understand that, yes, they are important and their actions can have a positive outcome to themselves and those around them. So this is more like a revival. We're changing the way people feel about politics, and it's exciting.
It's interesting that you use that word because, it is like an awakening. In the history of humanity, there was a movement called the Great Awakening that brought about a lot of change in society, including the abolition of slavery. And I believe there's a spiritual component to what we've gone through in the last 3 years. I'm not trying to promote any one theology here, but I've talked to so many people. They seem good, they seem evil, and evil like we've never imagined possible. And there's people who are still unaware, but there's a lot of people who are awakened, right? So, we're going to. By the way, one of the things we're going to have at the AGM, I'm really excited about this, we have a hospitality suite that's sponsored by Calgary Law Heat, but it's co-sponsored by like-minded constituency associations across the province.
Awesome.
So yes, we're going to have, it's the biggest one we can get, 200 people, and we're going to feature a lot of really exciting speakers, including Dr. Modry, Chris Scott is there. Danny Bulford will be there, Tori Tanner. We have a long list, Marco Van Hugenbos. So we're going to have just a really amazing experience of food, connection, having fun, and of course, hearing from some great speakers. So that's on the Friday. On the Saturday, that same room is going to use for the strong and free element of Next Gen. So that youth group from 14 to 25, we're sponsoring people. If you are 14 to 25, if you can't afford the $99, we'll sponsor you to come. But we have a whole long list of great speakers that are going to speak there, including Tanner and his brother Hunter and Naday are going to be speaking there, and others. So we're going to make it not just great stuff in the party, but the hospitality room, some great stuff for people. We call it the strong and free room, okay? So if you're Alberta strong and free, that room is yours. We want to invite people to enjoy and participate in that hospitality space that we have lined up.
We're going to wrap up in just a couple of minutes here because Chris has to go and actually talk with, or has a Zoom meeting or a podcast with Mark Van Hugenbos. But what I wanted to do is, as I'm going to keep going, I'll probably go for another 10 minutes because I've got a few APP announcements. But one of the questions that has actually shown up a couple of times in different iterations is this sort of thing. Easton asks, how are you ensuring that disruptors will not sign up for the AGM, then show up and disrupt the AGM like happened to the Wild Rose Party with Hinman's Minion trying to take over Whippa Party and causing downfall at the APP, or I'm not sure what, I think that's UCP.
I think that's supposed to be UCP.
Yeah. I would hate for this technique to become a pattern that leftists or people that don't want APP to exist or will take down UCP.
Yeah, and I think...
Can I respond to that? Because I got to go right away.
Show up in big enough numbers where it won't matter.
Or we drown them out. That's right. Yeah.
Last year, our numbers were so overwhelming that the other side didn't even know where to start, right? So we won all of the policy votes, won all the board of directors votes, all the governance votes, and it was just big enough numbers to attend. So it's a good question. How do I sponsor a kid to attend? Can you guys post my email address? And anyone who's listening, 14 to 25, they're free to attend. We need lots more. But make sure, the most important thing is, if you apply today, make sure that they're a member of the party by tomorrow, no later than midnight. Otherwise, sponsoring them isn't going to make any difference. They'll have fun and they'll eat food, but we want them to be able to vote too, right?
That's right.
So, yeah. So again, it's Roy J. Beyer at gmail.com is the best one to use. And we still have space for at least 30, 40 more youth. We're always getting more sponsorship money, so we want to be able to sponsor as many as we can. The most difficult thing is after tomorrow, if they're not members, it's no point sponsoring anymore. So, yeah.
Okay, well, it is 8 o'clock, which means I have to wrap up. I'm going to answer one question quickly. Somebody asked if we use other social media platforms. Yes, we do. Kerry, what are the platforms that we're streaming to? Do you recall?
Well, I think Rumble, LinkedIn, and I was going to just talk a little bit about that after the fact here, because people have said, well, what about Getter, and what about there's a lot of them that, and the one of the reasons why we don't do that per se is because StreamYard, which is the application and the platform that we use for doing these live streams, only has a certain number of availability. There are ways to get around it, but it takes a lot of work to set up one stream, say to Getter as an example. We're going to be looking at that. So we're on the operations team, and as well as obviously the webinar team for Wednesdays. And we have a list of tasks that we're looking through, and that will definitely be one of the things. We have a social media person that also does. Actually, we have a group of people. So I do want to acknowledge that there's actually a lot of people behind the scenes that even put this thing together. And people have stepped up volunteers wise. I'd like to thank Heather and Vicky stepping up today and even posting the posters and getting that involved. Of course, Walter, who's always amazing. But again, people are busy and there's only so much that he can possibly do. But thank you so much for getting involved in that. And if you've got some skills that you think that we could certainly use, that would be great to have you involved. And you can just go to the APP website, albertaprosperityproject.com, and send it out. Go under the contact information, and then get a hold of us and tell us what you can possibly do. And then that's definitely a great way to get involved with that.
Okay, and I'll just do my little final thing, I guess. Roy, thank you very much for coming on and sharing with us. I guess Kerry can stay on with you for a little while and continue after I'm gone. You'll probably get more done when I'm gone because it's easier. You'll get some words in. But I'd just like to say I actually have two jobs. My first job is the owner of the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. I make hamburgers. I pour coffee. I feed people. That's my job. And my second job is the CEO of the Alberta Prosperity Project. And I want to ensure a strong, free, and prosperous Alberta. And I will do that any way I can. So the Alberta Prosperity Project believes that this province should take back every sovereign jurisdiction that's guaranteed to us under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They also believe that probably isn't going to be enough because we've seen the federal government encroaching onto our jurisdiction for the last 118 years, and that's not changing unless we get some leverage. The only leverage that we could have that would be effective in opening up effective negotiations with the federal government is a referendum on independence. So we believe that we need our sovereignty back. We need the sovereignty that we already have that's been taken from us. And what we see here is we see a group of people that are working towards making Alberta a better place by fixing some of the policy, amending some legislation that's allowed the government to strip away our rights and freedoms over the last few years. And because we see these people doing this, we will support that, and we will always support things like that that are in alignment with our mission, our vision, and our mission statement. So as a CEO of the Alberta Prosperity Project, I would like to say thank you to everybody in the province who is stepping up and doing their part and using their voice to try and make a difference to make this province a better place. If we do this together, and we are doing it together, we can and we will make this province the most prosperous, strong, and free province in this country, or we will be strong, free, and prosperous outside of it. Thank you very much.
Very true. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, Chris and Kerry. Yeah. Do you need me to stay on, Kerry, or you're done?
You know what? With your part, I mean, there's probably some other questions. Let me just quickly go through if there's any other questions that I think you can answer, and then
Sure.
and then of course then we'll talk about other stuff here. Joanne says we're going to become the majority at this AGM, and I totally agree with that. Another question
Kerry.
was who are some of the interests popped up again?
Yeah, I forgot I'm the host of this. So
You're the host?
As soon as I hit end stream, it's going to shut the stream off.
Okay. Well, then we will quickly wrap this up, and we can always talk about. But the one thing that I really do want to talk about just quickly, so that people are aware, is that we are doing a series of events, and of course, I screwed up my front page here. So give me a second here, and I'll get to there. There you go.
A series of fortunate events.
A series of totally fortunate events that everybody in Alberta should be partaking in. If you go to the albertaprosperityproject.com website and you go under latest and you go under the events, you will see that we're actually populating stuff. This is great. I'm excited about having all these events coming up. So not only are we going to be putting the webinars up on here, so it's another place that you can look at, because I know we've been putting webinars maybe the day of or the day before, and again, that was because of the people involved and other commitments, etc.
Transitions.
Right, but we should be able to be, you should be able to look at a month ahead on the webinars and what's going on. We also have the APP Ambassador Tour, and this is with Corey Morgan from Western Standard, who's actually written a book called The Sovereigntist Handbook. And again, if you look back either on the APP webinars in the past, or even go to the chrisandkerryshow.com and just search for Corey Morgan, it'll show up. And we actually had him presenting what was in his book. And we were so enthralled with his knowledge on what it takes to become an independent Alberta and what the hurdles and challenges are, that we've decided that we are doing a tour with him, and it's going to be basically called the Ambassador Tour. And that's after a chapter in his book on basically how to become an ambassador for independence. If you don't have his book, you can go on Amazon, and I'm sure I've got it on here in one of my many, many open tabs. There it is. Paperback's $19.99. You can download it on Kindle or an audiobook. And
what's that book above?
That book above, this one here. You're not supposed to be looking at that. That's Tamara Leach's. Yeah, anything that's kind of related to that will show up, right? So, but excellent book. And if you don't have time to read a book like I don't seem to do, you can do an audiobook or even actually you do an audiobook. And I listen to podcasts as well, like an audiobook. I listen to them at 1.5 or 2 times speed. It's amazing how fast you can get through information when someone else is actually talking like this. It's great. And of course I drive everywhere. And so that's kind of what I end up doing while I'm driving. So, and there you go. And then Chris is now off to the back, but I did want to at least point out that we do have all of these events coming up in Alberta. And I did want to just kind of list off some of the names here of where you are, and you can always go and get more information. But this weekend we're in Cowley, Staveley, and Blackie. So Corey Morgan, I believe, is speaking at the Cowley event, and then Chris and Dr. Modry are speaking at Staveley and Blackie. And then, of course, we are listing our chapter meetings that are happening in here, and so St. Albert, Leduc. And then we've got another event for the Ambassador Tour in Vermilion, Plamondon, Fort McMurray, Grand Prairie, and I might as well continue on with this. Peace River, and I think that's it right now. But they're basically for the next 4 or 5 weekends, I believe, is how it works out to be. So again, you can just go on the Alberta Prosperity Project.com and then go to the events. So with that is how I'm going to wrap up. There's obviously more stuff that we need to talk about, so you might have to just tune in for next Wednesdays. Again, thank you so much, Roy, for being involved, and we're definitely going to be hanging out in that hospitality suite. I'm so excited.
Awesome, Kerry. Thanks so much for having me, and
right.
We'll
and
see you soon. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Good night, everyone.